My wife was hiding an affair, and I only found out through her phone. In an age dominated by technology, the secrets people keep often hide in the devices closest to them. Our phones have become extensions of ourselves, digital vaults containing our most private thoughts, conversations, and sometimes our most devastating deceptions. This is the story of a man whose world was turned upside down when he discovered his wife's affair, not through suspicion or investigation, but by accidentally finding the truth on her phone. A discovery that revealed how the very technology meant to bring us closer can enable the deepest betrayal. My name is Daniel, and I'm 37 years old. I live in Seattle, where the constant rain mirrors the emotional storms I've weathered over the past year. I work as a software engineer for a tech startup in the heart of the city, spending my days writing code and solving complex problems. The irony isn't lost on me that I make my living through technology, yet technology ultimately became the instrument that exposed the unraveling of my marriage. My wife, Sarah, is 35 and works in marketing for a mid-sized consulting firm. We met 8 years ago at a mutual friend's party, drawn together by our shared love of hiking and our ambitious career goals. She was vibrant and outgoing, with an infectious laugh and a way of making everyone around her feel special. I fell in love with her energy, her drive, and the way she approached life with fearless enthusiasm. We had been married for 6 years, and like many couples, I believed our relationship was based on trust and openness. We'd built a life together in our Craftsman home in the Ballard neighborhood. Morning coffee on the porch, weekend trips to the San Juan Islands, dinners with friends where Sarah's storytelling kept everyone entertained. We talked about eventually having children, about the businesses we might start, about growing old together watching the sunset over Puget Sound. I thought I knew Sarah completely. I thought our marriage, while not perfect, was solid and built on honest communication. But as I would discover, the person sleeping beside me every night was living a life I knew nothing about, hiding secrets behind a screen I rarely questioned. Sarah always kept her phone very private, often locking it and never letting me see her screen. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone deserves privacy, even in a marriage. I had my own phone with work emails and personal conversations I didn't necessarily share with her. Privacy, I believed, was healthy, a recognition that even in the closest relationships, individuals need their own space. But over time, Sarah's relationship with her phone became something more than just private. It became possessive, almost obsessive. She kept it within arm's reach at all times, taking it with her even when she went to the bathroom or stepped outside to check the mail. The phone was always face down on surfaces, the screen locked and secured with both a passcode and fingerprint recognition. She'd changed her settings so that message previews didn't appear on the lock screen, so even seeing who was texting her became impossible. I respected her boundaries. After all, privacy is important, and I didn't want to be the controlling husband who demanded access to his wife's every communication. I trusted her implicitly, never imagining that there might be a reason to doubt. But I never imagined that hiding behind this privacy was something far darker than work emails or personal conversations with friends. Things started to feel different about 6 months ago. Though looking back, I realized the changes had probably been building for longer than that. Sarah became more distant, physically, emotionally, and in the way she interacted with me. The warmth that had always characterized our relationship began to cool. She stopped initiating affection, and when I reached for her hand or tried to kiss her, she'd respond mechanically, as if going through the motions of being a wife without any genuine feeling behind it. Emotionally, she became unreachable. Our conversations, which used to flow easily about everything from work frustrations to philosophical debates about life, became surface-level exchanges about schedules and household logistics. When I asked about her day, she'd give one-word answers. When I tried to share something interesting that happened at work, she'd nod absently while scrolling through her phone, clearly not listening. She spent hours on her phone, always making sure I couldn't see her messages or calls. I'd walk into a room, and she'd quickly tilt the screen away or lock it entirely. The constant clicking and typing sounds became the soundtrack of our evenings. Sarah on the couch with her phone, me trying to engage her in conversation or suggesting we watch something together, or giving half-hearted responses without looking up from whatever was capturing her attention. She changed passwords, a fact I only discovered when I tried to use her laptop one day to look up a recipe we'd both saved. The password we'd always shared no longer worked. When I mentioned it, Sarah explained that she'd been advised at work to update all her passwords for security reasons, an explanation that sounded reasonable enough at the time. She took calls in other rooms, something she'd never done before. Her phone would ring, she'd glance at the screen, and then quickly excuse herself to the bedroom or even outside, closing doors behind her. The conversations were always whispered, and they seemed to last forever. When she returned, I'd casually ask who it was, just a client, or my sister dealing with some drama, or a friend from college I haven't talked to in years. The explanations always sounded plausible enough to not raise immediate red flags, but in aggregate, they created a pattern of secrecy. She even moved to factory reset her phone once when I accidentally glanced at it. We'd been sitting together on the couch, a rare moment of proximity, and her phone was on the cushion between us. A message notification flashed across the screen before she could grab it. I only caught a glimpse of a name I didn't recognize and what looked like a heart emoji. When I asked who it was, Sarah's reaction was extreme and immediate. She grabbed the phone, her face flushed, and stammered something about spam messages getting through her filter. The next day, I noticed her phone seemed different. All her wallpapers were back to default, and she was re-downloading apps. When I asked about it, she said she'd been having technical issues and had to reset everything. As a software engineer, I knew that a factory reset was an extreme solution for most problems, but I didn't press the issue. I should have. That was perhaps the clearest sign that something was seriously wrong, but I was too trusting, too willing to believe her explanations. My unease grew, but I still had no proof and kept hoping it was just work stress or personal issues she was working through. Sarah had recently taken on a major client at work, and I knew she'd been under pressure to deliver results. Maybe the distance and phone obsession were just manifestations of stress. Maybe she was dealing with personal anxieties she wasn't ready to share. Maybe I was being paranoid and overly suspicious. I tried different approaches to reconnect. I suggested date nights, which she'd agree to, but then seemed distracted during, checking her phone repeatedly even at romantic restaurants. I proposed a weekend getaway to the coast, but she claimed work was too demanding right now. I asked directly if everything was okay between us, if there was something we needed to talk about, and she'd reassure me that everything was fine, that she was just going through a stressful period and needed my patience. So I waited, giving her space, trusting that whatever was causing the distance would resolve itself. I convinced myself that all marriages go through rough patches, that the solution was patience and understanding, not suspicion and confrontation. I was so committed to being a good husband, a trusting partner, that I ignored the increasingly obvious signs that something was fundamentally wrong. Then one evening, while Sarah was out running errands, everything changed. She'd gone to the grocery store, saying she'd be back in about an hour. Her phone rang left unattended on the kitchen counter, an unusual occurrence since she normally took it everywhere. I was washing dishes when I heard it buzzing insistently, the vibration loud against the granite countertop. I glanced over and saw a name on the screen, Alex. I didn't recognize it, but that alone wasn't suspicious. Sarah knew lots of people through work and her social circles, but something about the way the phone kept ringing, caller's persistence, triggered a feeling in my gut that I couldn't ignore. The ringing stopped and immediately started again. And again, out of a mix of anxiety and curiosity, I picked it up. My hands trembled slightly as I held the device, Sarah's phone feeling heavier than it should. I knew her passcode. I'd seen her type it countless times, even though she'd recently become more careful about shielding the screen when entering it. It was her birth month and day, a simple pattern she'd used for years. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen. This was a violation of privacy. I knew that. In 6 years of marriage, I'd never once gone through Sarah's phone. It represented a line I'd never thought I'd cross, a boundary that respected her autonomy and our mutual trust. But the persistent ringing, the secrecy of recent months, the growing distance between us, all of it converged into a moment of decision. I unlocked it, something I had never done before without her permission. The phone opened to her home screen, and the missed call notifications were right there. 3 calls from Alex in the past 2 minutes. But it was what I saw next that made my heart sink. Message notifications covered the top of the screen, all from the same person, Alex. The preview text, despite her attempt to disable it, still showed fragments. Missing you already. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? My stomach dropped. With shaking hands, I opened her messaging app. What I found shocked me to my core. Dozens of text messages with a man I didn't know, filled with affection, secret plans, and declarations far beyond friendship. The conversation history went back months, 5 months, to be precise, creating a timeline that overlapped with when I'd first noticed Sarah becoming distant. I sat down heavily on a kitchen stool, unable to process what I was reading. The messages were intimate in ways that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I love you, Sarah had written just that morning, hours after she'd kissed my cheek goodbye and left for work. I love you too, Alex had responded. Last night was incredible. You're all I think about. I scrolled up, my hands trembling so badly I could barely control the screen. The messages revealed a secret relationship that had been going on for months, documented in excruciating detail. They discussed meeting in hotels. I recognized the names of several downtown Seattle hotels where apparently they'd had their rendezvous. The Columbia Tower Hotel appeared frequently, along with a boutique place in Capitol Hill I'd once suggested we stay at for an anniversary. They talked about hiding their meetings from everyone, coordinating their schedules carefully. Daniel's working late Tuesday. Can you get away? Sarah had written 3 weeks ago. Yes, I'll tell my wife I have a client dinner, Alex had responded. My wife. The words hit me like a physical blow. Alex was married too. This wasn't just an affair. It was a coordinated deception involving 4 lives, not just 2. They made plans for the future, completely hidden from me. Once we figure out how to tell them, we can finally be together openly, Sarah had written. I know it's hard now, but imagine waking up next to each other every morning without having to lie or hide. I can't wait for that day, Alex had replied. You're worth any complication, any difficult conversation. We'll get through this together. The betrayal hit me like a storm, wave after wave of realization crashing over me. Every late work night Sarah had claimed suddenly took on new meaning. Every weekend girls' trip I now suspected had been something else entirely. Every time she'd pulled away from my touch or seemed distracted during our conversations, she'd been thinking of him. Her phone was no longer just a device. It was a window into a secret life that shattered everything I believed about my marriage, my wife, and the reality I'd been living. I found photos too, pictures of them together that Sarah had saved in a hidden album. Alex was handsome in a generic way, with the kind of polished appearance that suggested he worked in business or finance. In the photos, Sarah looked happy, genuinely, radiantly happy in a way I hadn't seen her look in months. That might have hurt most of all. There were screenshots of hotel confirmations, saved maps to meeting locations, even a shared calendar they'd created to coordinate their schedules. They'd built an entire infrastructure to support their affair, a parallel relationship that existed alongside our marriage, but completely separate from it. I don't know how long I sat there reading, my sense of time completely distorted by shock and grief. It could have been 20 minutes or an hour. I was vaguely aware of tears on my face, of a physical pain in my chest that felt like my heart was actually breaking. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, the person I'd chosen to spend my life with, all of it was a lie, or at least built on a foundation of lies. I heard Sarah's car pull into the driveway, the familiar sound of the garage door opening. Panic flooded through me. I wasn't ready to confront her, didn't know what to say or how to say it, but I also couldn't pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen. I quickly placed her phone back on the counter where it had been, trying to compose myself even though I knew my face must show everything I was feeling. Sarah walked in carrying reusable grocery bags, calling out cheerfully, Daniel, can you help me with these? Her voice was light, casual, the voice of a wife returning from an ordinary errand. The normalcy of it, the complete disconnect between her tone and what I now knew, was surreal and horrifying. I walked to the doorway between the kitchen and garage, and she must have seen something in my expression because her smile faded immediately. What's wrong? You look terrible. Are you sick? Your phone rang, I said, my voice sounding distant and strange even to my own ears. Multiple times, from someone named Alex. I watched the color drain from Sarah's face, watched her eyes dart to the kitchen counter where her phone lay, watched the realization dawn that she'd made a critical mistake. Daniel, I answered it. I lied, needing to see her reaction. He seemed very eager to talk to you. Said something about last night being amazing and wanting to see you again soon. Sarah's hands went to her face, the grocery bags dropping to the garage floor. Oh God. Daniel, please, I can explain. Can you? I asked, my voice rising. Can you explain 5 months of messages? Can you explain the hotels, the secret meetings, the I love yous you've been sending to another man while sleeping in my bed every night? Can you explain planning a future with him while pretending to have a future with me? When I confronted Sarah with everything I discovered, her reaction was a mix of guilt and defensiveness. She initially tried to minimize it. It's not what you think. It's not as serious as it looks. I was going to end it. But faced with the evidence of months of documented betrayal, the denials crumbled quickly. She admitted to the affair, the words seeming to cause her physical pain to speak. Yes, I've been seeing Alex for 5 months. I met him at a marketing conference, and we just connected in a way I haven't felt in years. I never meant for it to happen, Daniel. I never set out to hurt you, but you did hurt me, I said, my voice breaking. Every day for 5 months, you chose to hurt me. Every time you lied about where you were going, every time you texted him while sitting next to me, every time you made plans with him behind my back. Those were choices, Sarah, not accidents. She tried explaining her loneliness and frustration, talking about how our marriage had become routine and passionless, how she'd felt taken for granted and invisible. You stopped seeing me, Daniel. You became so focused on work, so comfortable with our routine, that you didn't notice I was unhappy. I tried to tell you in small ways, but you never heard me. So the solution was to cheat? I asked, incredulous. Instead of telling me directly that you were unhappy, instead of suggesting counseling or even separation, you decided to have an affair and lie to me about it for months? I know it was wrong, Sarah said through tears. I know there's no excuse, but I felt so alone, so invisible in our marriage. Alex made me feel seen, valued, desired. With him, I felt like myself again instead of just your wife or someone's employee. I felt alive, and I made you feel dead. The words came out bitter and hurt. I worked hard to build a life with you, Sarah. Maybe I wasn't perfect, maybe I got too comfortable, but I never betrayed you. I never lied to you. I never made you a fool while I lived a secret life. But none of her explanations actions lessened the pain. She had been living a lie, keeping a double life hidden behind the screen. Everything I thought I knew, her late work nights, her weekend self-care trips, her constant phone use, was a carefully crafted illusion designed to hide the truth while maintaining the appearance of a normal marriage. The days that followed were surreal and painful. Sarah stayed with a friend while we figured out what to do next. I called in sick to work, unable to focus on anything but the wreckage of my marriage. I reread the messages obsessively, torturing myself with every detail, every declaration of love she'd made to him, every lie she'd told me. I learned things I wished I didn't know. That girl's weekend to Portland 3 months ago, she'd been with Alex in a bed-and-breakfast in the Willamette Valley. The night she claimed to be working late on an urgent presentation, she'd been at his apartment across town. The morning she'd seemed particularly cheerful and had made me breakfast unprompted. She'd just received a good morning text from him. Every memory was now tainted, every moment of our recent history recontextualized through the lens of her betrayal. I found myself questioning everything, not just the past 5 months, but our entire relationship. Had there been other affairs I hadn't discovered? Had she ever truly loved me? Or had I always been a convenient placeholder? We tried counseling, more at my insistence than from any real hope of salvaging the marriage. I needed to understand how this had happened, needed to hear from a professional whether there was any path forward. Our therapist, Dr. Chun, was compassionate but direct. She asked hard questions of both of us, examining not just the affair but the state of our marriage before it began. Sarah talked about feeling neglected and taken for granted, about how our marriage had become more like a comfortable friendship than a passionate partnership. She admitted she'd been unhappy for over a year but hadn't known how to communicate it effectively. She claimed she'd dropped hints that I'd missed, that she'd tried to initiate conversations about the state of our marriage that I'd brushed aside as her being overly emotional. I had to confront my own role in the deterioration of our marriage. I had been working long hours, had often come home tired and distracted, had stopped planning romantic gestures or surprise dates. I'd assumed that because we got along well and had a stable life, everything was fine. I'd stopped putting in the effort that relationships require, had taken Sarah's presence for granted rather than actively choosing her every day. But acknowledging my failures as a husband didn't make her betrayal acceptable or understandable. Dr. Chin was clear about that. While marital problems might explain vulnerability to an affair, they never excused the choice to cheat rather than honestly address those problems. The trust was broken too deeply for counseling to make a real difference. I couldn't look at Sarah without seeing the messages, without imagining her with Alex, without feeling the sting of every lie she'd told. Even when she was being completely honest in our sessions, I found myself doubting her words, looking for hidden meanings or additional deceptions. Sarah eventually ended things with Alex, at least according to her. She showed me the message she'd sent him, breaking off the relationship and explaining that she needed to try to save her marriage. But I couldn't shake the suspicion that she'd only done so because she'd been caught, not because she genuinely wanted to choose me over him. Our marriage could not survive this hidden betrayal. 3 months after the discovery, Sarah eventually moved out, renting an apartment in Fremont while we worked through the divorce process. The end of our marriage was both devastating and oddly anticlimactic. 6 years of shared life reduced to dividing possessions and signing papers. I am left rebuilding my life and learning to trust again, a process that's proving slower and more difficult than I imagined. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to fill the evenings that now feel empty and silent. I started seeing a therapist individually, working through the betrayal trauma and examining my own patterns in relationships. Friends rallied around me, offering support and company, but I found it hard to accept help or admit how broken I felt. Men aren't supposed to fall apart over romantic betrayal, or at least that's what society implies. But I did fall apart, spending countless nights lying awake replaying every moment of the discovery, every message I'd read, every lie she'd told. Dating feels impossible right now. The thought of trusting someone new, of making myself vulnerable again, triggers anxiety that wasn't there before. I find myself hypervigilant about potential partners' phone use, looking for signs of secrecy that might not mean anything, but that my damaged trust interprets as red flags. This experience taught me how technology can both connect us and conceal the deepest betrayals. The same devices that let us stay in touch with loved ones across distances can also facilitate secret relationships conducted in plain sight. Sarah had carried on an entire affair through her phone, the device always with her, always protected, always ready to connect her to a life I knew nothing about. The truth, now more than ever, is often just a swipe or tap away, even when you least expect it. Every text message is documented, every call logged, every photo saved. Technology creates a permanent record of our actions and choices, a digital trail that can expose deceptions even years later. But technology is neutral. It's the choices people make that determine whether it brings us together or tears us apart. Sarah chose to use her phone to facilitate betrayal. She chose to document her affair and messages she kept on a device she brought into into our home every night. She chose secrecy over honesty, deception over difficult conversations, temporary pleasure over lasting commitment. I've learned that privacy and secrecy are not the same thing. Privacy is healthy and necessary. Secrecy that involves deception and betrayal is toxic. In my next relationship, whenever I'm ready for that, I want to build something based on transparency while still respecting individual space. I want a partner who has nothing to hide because they've chosen honesty, not someone who guards their phone like it contains state secrets. I've also learned that trust is both incredibly precious and incredibly fragile. It takes years to build and seconds to destroy. Once broken, it may never fully return to what it was, and that's a loss that affects not just the betrayed relationship, but future ones as well. A year has passed since that evening in the kitchen when I unlocked Sarah's phone and discovered her secret life. I'm healing slowly and unevenly, with progress that sometimes feels invisible until I look back and realize how far I've come. The house feels like mine now rather than ours, redecorated and rearranged to reflect only my tastes and needs. I've heard through mutual friends that Sarah and Alex are together now, officially dating after both their marriages ended. Part of me wonders if what they have is real or if it was only exciting because it was forbidden. Part of me doesn't care anymore. They're no longer my concern, just people I used to know who made choices that destroyed the life we built that I'm learning to trust again in small ways. I'm learning that not everyone will betray me, that Sarah's choices don't define all relationships, that it's possible to be vulnerable without being naive. It's a slow process, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but I'm committed to not letting her betrayal turn me into someone bitter and closed off. The truth found on that phone screen shattered my world, but it also freed me from a relationship that was built on lies. And while I wouldn't choose to go through this pain again, I can acknowledge that it's taught me invaluable lessons about trust, communication, honesty, and the person I want to be in my next relationship, whenever that might be.